What up, guys? My name is Hutch, and I make videos and put them on the internet. Lil Nas X over the last few days has basically broken the internet by releasing a single Call Me By Your Name and an accompanying video that featured satanic imagery, and it pissed a lot of people off. I personally love the video. I thought it was artistically brilliant. I love the song as well, and his career is kind of interesting to me right now. I've been paying attention to him more and more over the last couple of years just because of the ways that he's challenging the culture, basically. I had a conversation with right-winger, self-described conservative yesterday. We were intending on just talking about the issue of gun control and the AR-15, but we ended up leading with this topic. We had a little bit of a debate about the use of satanic imagery, what kind of role that could possibly serve in an artistic sense, and I thought it was interesting enough to warrant a video that you guys could see here on YouTube. If you enjoy this video, consider clicking like, maybe drop a comment for the algorithm. If you enjoy the content on the channel these days, consider subscribing. And yeah, sit back and enjoy.
I wanted to go to the topic of religion because that seems particularly relevant, and we'll get to gun control eventually. I don't know how much time you have, but
I got time for you, Hutch.
Okay, brother, that's great news. But the topic of religion and religious institutions and religious norms or cultural norms that arise because of religion seems particularly relevant in the last few days because of the Lil Nas X video. I don't know if you've had a chance.
I've been seeing you stan him pretty hard on Twitter. I'm not gonna lie, it was hard not to be a reply guy.
Oh, brother, I stan him so hard right now. But not because I'm a little bit older now. Like I think like younger me, like 20 to 25, maybe even like up to 30 would have simply delighted in the fact that he was pissing off, who I considered to be all the right people. I don't get that level of satisfaction from it anymore. The thing that I derive satisfaction from watching Lil Nas X challenge cultural norms in the artistic way that he did it, and I loved that video. I thought it was pretty artistically brilliant. The reason why I stand that so hard is because I think I look at it from the perspective of, I'm a straight white guy. I have no idea what it's like to be a gay black man. And to be surrounded by people throughout your entire upbringing telling you that your existence is an abomination and you've given in to the temptations of Satan and you'll spend eternity in a lake of fire for simply loving who you love. And I imagine I can imagine from the perspective of that person, watching that video would be quite cathartic and empowering. And that's what I get happy about. The fact that it pisses off some people, I guess I derive some satisfaction from that. I'm not going to lie. Let me walk that back just a little bit. But I derive way more satisfaction from a sense of gay liberation, black and gay liberation, and to see it celebrated on such a mainstream level. Number one trending on YouTube and one of the fastest streaming songs on Spotify. And I think that indicates that we are progressing as a society. And I think that should be celebrated, even if you don't want to get into the antagonistic part of it.
Well, so how do you feel about like the satanic imagery?
I thought it was brilliant. In the video or just in general?
Yeah. So my wife, because I was only able to watch it with the volume off, unfortunately, and I also haven't done like a lyrical analysis of it. Mm-hmm. But basically what she was saying was that the point of the video was like, oh, well, like if I'm going to be fucking judged this hard, I'm going to be deemed an abomination, but this seems a part that's like intrinsically part of me. Mm-hmm. Then I would rather like, it's kind of like I would rather burn in hell with the sinners than live in, peace with the saints or something like that. Like hell sounds a lot more fun. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that's like a Billy Joel or something like that. But it's taken to a level that I think that a lot of Christians, and me as somebody who is raised Christian, and me who is somebody who thinks that there actually is like a battle, like a Jungian battle between, kind of like how people orient their lives and what they worship, even if they don't do so consciously, what they worship like subconsciously through their actions. That's what I find toxic. So I actually give Lil Nas like a lot of latitude because, like you said, I can't imagine what it's like being raised in a society in which you're told daily or weekly that you're an abomination. I don't know what that feels like, so I give them a decent amount of latitude there. And of course, like, we live in a capitalist society, so if you use provocative imagery, you're going to get more attention. That being said, the specific use of satanic imagery is frustrating to me personally.
Well, the song fucking slaps, to be clear, and you should listen to it like without the video one of these days. If
independent of the video.
But it's a fucking banger of a song. But let me just sort of like pin you down a little bit here and get a decent grip on like what. So do you believe that there is a literal Satan, literal God, or because you the way that you spoke about it just a moment ago, you were more focused on the symbolic nature of these struggles when it comes to scripture, and how they could be applied to how they could be applied to various other aspects of our life, like our own personal struggle for self-actualization or whatever.
So at this time, at this point, maybe not literally, and I probably take like a higher. This is always my crime. Is I always take like a higher order definition, higher order interpretation of things. Like I'm not like a religious literalist or anything like that. But for me, it seems pretty obvious that there's at least like a fundamental creative force that threads its way through reality. On top of that, it seems like there's rules for existence in reality. It seems like when you disobey those rules, you pay physical, mental, emotional consequences. And when you obey those rules, your life tends to do better. Now, some of these things are physiological, mental, or whatever. But if you look at, oftentimes, like scriptural texts are like decried as like these Iron Age barbaristic, like moral codes and all that kind of stuff. And I think that's true to a certain extent. But at the same time, what I'm seeing human beings in a chaotic and terrifying universe grasping at rules and order and finding some through which to orient their lives. Now, I call that God. I don't know if that force is conscious. I don't know if that force even cares about human beings. But I think that's like when like, Jews were in the desert doing mushrooms and fucking coming up with like legal codes. I'm pretty sure that's what they were trying to poke at, even if they were poking at it in a flawed and very human way.
You should clarify that you're actually not kidding. For some of the people in the chat that maybe think he's kidding.
I'm not kidding.
People speculate that one, much.
No, I literally think.
Is it Genesis or is it Exodus? The one that they speculate was written when they're all tripping balls on mushrooms.
Yeah, like literally, I think religion is the history of Iron Age mystics, either in a schizophrenic or hallucinogenic state, trying to grasp at moral philosophy.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess the reason why I wanted you to clarify that is because like I don't personally see the issue of someone like an artist reclaiming satanic imagery to push what is ultimately a very positive message, when so many in the religious right in this country and in the world at large have weaponized scripture and Satan and used it as a blunt instrument to beat communities like LGBTQ folks. So to me, it seems like a logical, rational, proportionate response to millennia of deplorable treatment.
Sure. But my goal is not to perpetuate the war, it's to end it. So I think there's a variety of ways in which you could end it. One of them being apparently there's like a new modern interpretation that like the times that in the modern Bible homosexuality was translated, it actually meant pedophile.
Yep.
There's also I want to say kind of like a less literal reconciliation with some like Unitarian or non-denominational churches with basically homosexual folk or trans folk. I think that like basically pushing when you use this, and like I'm not saying Lil Nas doesn't have the right to do it. He has the right to do whatever the fuck he wants, the same way I have the right to criticize him for it. Mm-hmm. What I see as the problem, and I'm not saying this isn't a proportional problem, I'm just saying it's a problem, is that basically not only are you losing me from like a support standpoint, you're also losing like the moderative forces, and you're kind of giving a lot of slippery slope analogy ammunition to the opposite side. So, first, the gays wanted to be equal, and now we have Drag Queen Story Hour, and Lil Nas is promoting Nike footwear using satanic imagery. We told you this shit was going to happen and you guys didn't listen to us. So like, obviously that's like an increasingly small, but like vocal part of the American populace, but that doesn't mean that they're not real. That also doesn't mean that they're not dangerous. So that's my fear.
Well, when we look at the data recently, I don't know if you saw, but there was a piece of data that was going around a couple days ago that tracked membership to a church. And how that's changed over the last year. And it used to be that 70% of the country regularly went to a church. That's dropped down to 50%. So if you're talking about there being a war going on right now, couldn't you say that, you know, if we were going back to the 80s, maybe we'd be talking about Madonna. If we're going back to like the 70s, wouldn't we be talking about like Iron Maiden? If we went to the 90s, we'd be talking about, you know, like different punk bands. Couldn't you say that they're winning the war? I mean, by pointing out
Sure.
some of the I guess we'll say inconsistencies, to be very charitable, when it comes to interpretations of scripture and, you know, what is the ideal way to live a Christian life, and if there was a God, how would he look at people like homosexuals in this country? I think one of the I see the solution to these problems as moving personally. I see the solutions to many of these problems. I see the solution to be moving away from religion and moving towards a more scientific lens and a more humanitarian lens to develop a sense of empathy, because I don't think that you need a omnipotent being that's always there holding you accountable to cultivate a sense of empathy and a sense of connection with your fellow human beings or animals or whatever on this planet. That being said, I don't judge people harshly for belonging to a religion, because I also recognize through personal experience, I've had many, many friends who have been completely transformed through the teachings of Christ and totally turned their lives around from a morally bankrupt abyss into a life of fulfilling human connection. I've seen that happen so many times. And so I can't go like the full sort of like Ricky Gervais, Richard Dawkins route with religion, but I still view it apprehensively. And I'm grateful to artists that come in and challenge deeply ingrained norms and belief systems and potentially and hopefully move society forward.
My fear is more about the preservation of the ethic than it is necessarily like a belief in an interpersonal God. So for instance, like you can jump on Twitter right now and see leftist, secular, anti-theistic leftists just tearing each other to shreds over the slightest like ideological transgression. You also see people who effectively can't apologize. They can't say they're sorry. They can't atone. They don't know what redemption is. They don't know what forgiveness is. Furthermore, the public doesn't seem to be willing or able or want to understand like these ethics of like atonement and forgiveness. You know, turning the other cheek seems to be less and less popular by the day, even amongst even in Christian circles. It seems like a lot of people aren't interested in turning the other cheek. Mm-hmm. So while I wouldn't say that like, oh, we're departing from some golden age in which we actually lived up to these ideals, the preservation, promotion, and adherence to these ideals is actually, I think, incredibly important. I'm not saying that you need religion in order to do them, but effectively what I get frustrated with atheists or anti-theists with is they're so concerned with the destruction of these like moral structures that they don't really ask like, you know, what's next or what's going to replace it. And I understand that you said like scientism or humanism or something like that, and like, yeah, maybe that has its role, but it's just not enough for me personally. I don't like thinking that I'm an accident, like even if I'm wrong. I don't like rooting my life in the fact that I'm a biochemical accident. I don't like rooting my life in the fact that the only value that I can derive from this life is, you know, empathy with other humans and improving the material conditions of other humans. I need a more heroic meta narrative to keep me alive, keep me afloat, keep me from the nihilistic abyss that your friends fell into. And while it doesn't have to be literal, it does have to be rooted in something a little bit different than like Star Trek fantasy fanfic. So
wait, which of my friends do you think fell into that abyss?
I don't know, but like didn't you say that a whole bunch of people were a bunch of fucking assholes and then they converted to Christianity?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I misinterpreted what you said. Okay, yes.
Okay, yeah.
All right, so I guess to put it in a different way, if you take a if you take some parents over here and some parents over here, and these parents on the left, and I'm not talking about left right political stuff, I'm just saying like these parents on the left raise their child to live a moral life because they're accountable to a supreme being and could potentially be accountable in eternity to a malevolent being. And if you have some parents on the right that raise their kids to treat people with respect because they deeply instill a sense of empathy, if continuously asking their children, okay, you treated this person over here this way, how would you feel if somebody treated you the same way? I have more faith that the child on the right is going to be more positive to the greater good than the person on the left. So I think you can...
politically or hypothetically, I kind of missed it. Which one did you think was going to be better, the religious people or the ethical people, the secular ethical people?
Ethical, because I think that they're going to be motivated by a sense of collective good. And I think that's sure. Especially with the problems that we're facing now and we will continuously face for the next several decades. Just take climate, for example, just one of them. I believe that the people on the right are going to be more inclined to cooperate. I believe that the people on the right are going to be more inclined to wear a mask. I believe that they're going to be more inclined to social distance when we're in a pandemic, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
And I'm okay with that. But number one, unfortunately, humanity is not one size fits all. Number two, I don't think that you can root people's specifically, like, I don't think you can have a specific calling to like secular humanist empathy for all people while simultaneously believing that we're like not like, again, like a nihilistic accident of biochemistry. Because basically, I know that is the appeal that we're going to, but there's a darker implication of nihilism that I basically lived for a while, and also lived especially during my teenage years and my early 20s, which was basically that it doesn't matter. It doesn't fucking matter. It doesn't matter if I'm right or wrong. Doesn't matter if I'm moral or immoral. Doesn't fucking matter, because in the end, whether I live 10 years or if I live 80 years, I'm going to be thrown into the black pit of oblivion. I will spend all of eternity unconscious. The chances of me existing again are next to zero. So why not pursue a life of selfishness, hedonism, and all that kind of stuff? Because regardless of whether or not I'm empathetic, kind, whatever, it actually, not only does it not matter like existentially, it literally doesn't matter cosmically. And why not get as much pleasure as I can in the meantime? Mm-hmm. And while I evolved out of that, because there is a certain amount of pain that comes with that pleasure, I see a lot of people who don't. And while you can make these like appeals to humanism or appeals to empathy or appeals to whatever, some people just don't give a fuck. Also, just a second point is basically like, I think people are incredibly fucking stupid. Like I said, this is one of the reasons why I don't identify as like a leftist or a left-wing person. While power might come from the people, I think most people are fucking animals. That doesn't mean that you don't need a narrative, like a grand narrative or a metaphysical narrative or a parable or a story. That way, people who are fucking idiots can derive like moral messaging and moral order out of stories. And no offense, but like scientism and humanism is like a pretty high order, high intelligence story, and it's also fucking boring.
Well, I mean, I don't know if you get into like the really highly technical shit, like graduate level shit, then it's gonna fly over my head. I'm gonna get bored. But I wouldn't say that science is boring. And just to hit on your point about nihilism, and the point was taken. You see that all the time. People without any sense of without any kind of firm moral code, these are people that are capable of tremendous harm. But I had a different experience, and this is just anecdotal. I'm not trying to make some point or try to suggest that it's a part of a larger trend. But for me, so much of my life has been defined by a sense of either impending doom or deep regret. So, depression about the past and a lot of anxiety about the future. And through the support of family and friends, and also some extensive experimenting with hallucinogens, I started to think about my life and my past and my potential future in a totally different way, and that sense of nothing really mattering, of my life really not mattering that much. Like, I have some notoriety on the internet, but when I die, who the fuck is going to be talking about me 50 years from now or 20 years from now? Like, zero people. In that sense, most of what I do with my life doesn't really matter. I mean, like, you can say that some people maybe got some insight from me that maybe like improve their lives or whatever, and like that's cool. That's a cool thought, but that's a really temporary ripple in time. And so when I started to look at the universe and the enormity of it and the inconsequential nature of my existence, it was quite a freeing experience. And I started to experience less regret and less anxiety about the future. And I didn't need the threat of hell to get there. But that was just my story.
No, I think cosmic nihilism or cosmic absurdism is actually incredibly powerful. So, for instance, like, I really don't give that much of a shit about getting canceled, because 100 years from now, nobody's going to give a fuck about that one time this random YouTube asshole got fucking yelled at on Twitter. Nobody's going to give a shit. So, in one way, rooting your life in the reality of the temporariness and the mortality of it can actually be quite freeing, and I actually agree with you there. The thing is, though, that, so for instance, are you pro-natalist, anti-natalist? Do you have kids? Do you plan on having kids?
Don't plan on having kids, but I love it when my friends and family have kids, because I get to hang out with the kids without being responsible.
So this isn't an individual moral judgment, but I do want to say this because I think this is what's going on. So I look at the past, and I see hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years, if not billions of years, of people fighting and fucking and dying in order for me to exist. And as painful as my existence is, literally, I'm in physical pain a decent amount of the time. That's why you'll see me like rub my shoulder and my neck and shit. So as painful as existence is, I think it's cool as fuck. Like, I think existence is very cool. I think, life is cool. I think these moral and spiritual mysteries are very cool. I love it. Like, as a matter of fact, I'm actually I'm furious at God, if he exists, that life is temporary. Very, very angry. Very
totally
bitter.
With you on that one.
Yeah, pretty bitter about mortality. Not gonna lie.
Totally with you on that one.
But at the same time, it's a very cool gift to be given sentience and a body and a sense of history and a sense of memory and motion, and a lot of really cool senses and perceptions that we kind of take for granted on a day-to-day basis when you're trapped in the flow of life. And the time that we were born in, what an incredible privilege. I mean, a lot of people. I'm furious. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, I mean, a lot of people are suffering in the times that we're living now, and I'm not trying to trivialize that, but if you take yourself out of your own experience and just look at the fork in the road that humanity is in right now, if you divorce yourself from all the pain and suffering, it's incredibly interesting, because it seemed like we were on this kind of fixed path for a long time, and now there's all these different branches that we could go, and some of them are horrifying. And some of them are
livid. I am livid. I'm not going to live long enough to explore these branches. Furious.
Yeah, me too.
Like transhumanism or genetic modification or space travel or space colonization or space capitalism or the extension of the human life or high technology or AI. We're in like a nascent period. We're in a birth period.
Imagine dying one day before they figure out how to like elongate people's lives by like 300 years.
Oh yeah, but that I'm considering myself to be a part of that generation, so I'm trying to make my peace with it.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, but so sorry. Can you talk for a second so I can chew this thing?
Yeah, I mean, you were just talking about. I mean, I don't know how to expand on your point. I mean, I totally agree with you. I mean, this is just such an. It's almost impossible to be bored, I guess, is what I was going to say these days. Like, if there's just so much stuff to consume and learn, and the accessibility
if you're fucking bored, you're fucking lazy. Like that's your fault, not anybody else's.
Or depressed.
If you have a smartphone.
Or depressed.
Yeah. So I was gonna get to natalism. So I was kind of like rooting myself in this like very long cycle of struggle and life and death and all that kind of stuff. And I don't know if you have any siblings, but I don't feel comfortable ending a genetic line because life might not be purposeful, that like cosmic nihilism might be technically true. I don't feel comfortable with that. So
are you talking about people that are opposed to having kids because of like climate change or whatever? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, or just their own hedonism. They just want to enjoy their own lives. They don't want the responsibility of having kids.
Well,
so
I would fit in that category. But I mean, but wouldn't you say that that's got to be probably like a small share of people that aren't having kids are doing it because of some sense of morality? I think probably the biggest reason
birth rates have plummeted.
Right, but don't you think that has to do? Don't you think that might have something to do with economic prospects for like the younger generation? I mean, they're
no.
Oh, absolutely. Really? You don't
no.
think, you don't see a correlation
this is
whatsoever?
Purely cultural. This is your grandma, your great grandma had a fucking like I'm eating this fucking pho or whatever. Your grandma or your great grandma was eating like a fucking like a mineralized rock dropped in a fucking in like a fucking boiling pot so she could suck the salt off of the fucking rock, and she still had 8 kids. So it's a preference.
My grandma had 12 kids, and but the fact that
she was sucking on rocks in order to survive.
No, they ate like lasagna, pasta, stuff like that. But like,
should have known I was talking to an Italian.
You don't see that. You don't see that.
No, I think economic pressure is real, but I do think that like I'm going to tell this to your audience, especially if they're younger. There will never be a right time to have kids. There will never be a time that you can afford your kids. Have them anyways. It's not going to happen. There will never be a fucking time where you're going to have your mortgage paid off, your debt paid off, your car paid off. It's just not going to fucking happen. If you're going to have kids, just fucking have kids.
Well, I just think a lot of younger people now are having to settle for jobs that they wouldn't have had to settle for just 50 years ago. And so the prospect of trying to raise a kid on like $15 an hour or whatever is horrifying.
Yeah, but the American, okay, and this is why I fight the right so hard, okay? This is why I fight conservatives, because they always use this like equality of opportunity bullshit fucking to say, oh, this is the richest time in history. Did you know that a fucking 50-inch TV is $328? Meanwhile, they're ignoring that they're basically paying people less than subsistence wages. They don't have health care. They don't have insurance. They don't have retirement. Their kids go to dog shit schools. This is why like people think I'm a fucking leftist. I'm not a leftist. I'm just not a fucking sociopath. Like that's like I want a human being who's born to a single mother who works full time. I want them to have educational and extracurricular activities sufficient so that by the time that they're 22, if they want it, they can have a degree or a technical certificate. They've gone to a good school their entire life. Mm-hmm. They haven't been starving their entire life. And regardless of the circumstance of their parents, they actually have a real shot at gainful employment and societal productivity. And unless we meet that threshold, then we're failing as a society.
This is why I think you're kind of like the opposite of Dave Rubin, where, for the longest time, like he refused to call himself a conservative. I don't know if that was for grifting purposes or whatever. And then it's only been in the last year that he's come out and self-identified as a conservative. You certainly have some beliefs that line up with right wingers, but when you talk, and I don't know if labels are just arbitrary in the 21st century at this point, because the term moderate and progressive mean totally different things to different people. It's not even just like what's the word I'm looking for when there's two choices?
Binary prisoner's dilemma.
Yeah. It's not even like a binary thing. There's like a wide spectrum of what these words mean, but according to my understanding of these words, you come across as way more of a progressive than a conservative. I wonder if it's because you run in like social circles where you hang out with a lot of right wingers, or maybe you have a lot of family that's right wingers, and so maybe that's like
it's both. It's both. A lot of my friends are liberals and progressives, and a lot of my family are conservatives and libertarians. And so I've had like a lot of exposure to I mean, I think enlightened centrist or centrism would probably be more accurate, right? But at the same time, basically what I want to show on the right is just because you claim the title right doesn't mean that you have to fucking be a sociopath. Doesn't mean that, like so for instance, Teddy Roosevelt was a Republican. He was a progressive Republican, but he was a Republican. And he was not interested in saying government bad, free, laissez-faire economics, trickle-down economic theory, all that kind of shit. No, he looked at fucking corporations. He's like, you motherfuckers got too much power. And he ran around and he smashed industry. So Teddy Roosevelt had some other, less ideal beliefs, but Richard fucking Nixon founded the fucking EPA. He believed that like environmentalism was compatible with the right. So, and also like a lot of like right-wing beliefs are rooted in Christianity. And I think they're rooted in misinterpretations of Christianity. So basically what a lot of Christians do is they say that we are stewards of the earth. We were given dominion over the earth in God's absence, so we can do whatever the fuck we want. We can mass slaughter animals. We can destroy ecosystems. We can mine whatever we want because it's ours.
Manifest
That's not
destiny.
what the Bible says. The Bible says be a steward. And a steward is somebody who watches after a kingdom while the king is away. You don't destroy the kingdom because it's yours. You maintain the kingdom because it's somebody else's. Mm-hmm. And that's one of like the fundamental misinterpretations of like even Christian faith that I think is so goddamn toxic that listening to fucking like TPUSA fucking shills suck the dick of the oil lobby in the name of like fundamentalist Christian faith and right winger bullshit. Mm-hmm. It's like literally a step away from idolatry. When you see Christians like pretending that Donald Trump is a good Christian, that's idolatry. That's fucking, it has something to do with the faith because obviously they're Christians, but it doesn't have anything to do with any good part of the faith, I would say.
I don't understand why they don't just come out and rationalize it in the following way. Just say, listen, I know he's not an ideal Christian. I know that if he was a relative of mine, I probably would be, probably would exchange words with them in Thanksgiving. However, he is going to appoint conservative judges. He's going to appoint conservative Supreme Court justices, and he's going to pursue a legislative agenda that more lines up with my Christian view of this country. Therefore, I believe it's my obligation to support him. That, I don't think I would have much of a problem with that, because at the very least, it's principled. The problem that I would have would come in the form of the consequences that arise from these destructive policies and these horrible judges and justices, and I would be pissed about that. But at the very least, I would be able to say, okay, well, that's a principled person. But when you see the sort of delusional takes that you're describing, it's difficult to make sense of that, and it's difficult not to just react with anger.